Hello, and welcome to episode 38 of the Carry On with Carrie podcast. Today, I am thrilled to introduce you to Nick Thompson. Nick Thompson is a former cast member on the Netflix series Love is Blind. It's a reality TV show that promises to find you love without even seeing your person first. And they put you in pods, and it's quite a psychological experiment. Now, it's not exactly what Nick signed up for. You'll find out in this episode a little bit of what goes on behind the scenes and what the reality is behind reality TV. So here we go. I'm sure you want to hear more from Nick, and now it's time to talk. Well, welcome to the show. How are you, Nick?
I'm doing fine, Carrie. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm super excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. I love a good conversation about mental health.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's important. And I've been following you a little bit here and there on Instagram, and watched you, of course, on the reality show Love is Blind. And just very interested to hear your story. And I think it'll probably surprise a lot of people to hear kind of what you went through and where you are right now. So
yeah, it's I think one of the cool things about talking to you, and I listened to your episode with Todd actually earlier today. I think it's really cool that you kind of like invite people on and give them the space to tell their story with, at least it seems, without an agenda. So I'm happy to do that today.
Yeah, absolutely. Every story that's told, somebody can relate in some way, right? So
yeah, very true. That's what I think is so cool about social media right now too, is that you can almost find your tribe and your people, so that you don't feel so alone, right? So that things are relatable. And just because, you may have seen me on TV or something, or someone has seen me on TV, or ironically, some people don't, a lot of people listen to my podcast that did not watch the show, which is cool. So it is just nice to have that like connection with someone, even if it's virtual, that you would have never had before.
I know, I have to agree. It actually kind of gives me chills. I get the chills a couple times an episode because I'm like, how am I talking to this person right now? I felt so fortunate that like a year ago, I could have never imagined that I would be sitting down talking to so many like-minded, caring, empathetic people, and that's so far what I've come across. So
yeah, that's great to hear. I love to hear that, because there's also some not so nice people on the internet. So you can get both. So it's good to surround yourself with the positives.
Yeah.
You did?
I did. And
what was it?
It was just kind of yucky, but you live and learn, and you, like you kind of said, you are allowed to choose who you would like to speak to, or who you, it doesn't
engage with.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
which is good. That's a good thing. Yeah. And that's, you learn that when you're in the public eye in any way, that there's going to be people that hate you no matter what. So,
right.
So you just gotta kind of ignore the noise and focus on what matters and the connections that matter.
Right. And I think that's why I'm kind of excited to talk. Well, I'm very excited to talk to you, but just to hear how you, I look at that. I often think of that, like when I watch reality shows, I think, and to be honest with you, I have started watching the Real Housewives of, New York and all that. And I look at it and I think, is this real? Is it like, are they real? How can they be so distressed and not have, I don't know, some kind of mental health issue from it? And like, they're always on camera. And I just always wonder what the effects are on them.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for any of the housewives, but I can imagine being on a show like that, where it is, and it's, I haven't really watched it. I've seen bits and pieces of it here, but it's like a different type of show where you're like a recurring cast, and you know these people, and probably know them in real life ahead of time and during. And I think it's probably it's a totally different kind of beast, but I do think it's interesting because they kind of make a career out of it. Where a lot of people that go on like a dating show or something, you're kind of one and done unless you go into, Bachelor in Paradise or something, or on the next season of The Bachelorette or whatever that is,
Yeah. Well, and that's where, so I did watch Love is Blind, and I watched season 2. And I remember, I think after season 2, I didn't watch again, actually, because I did find it very, there were certain things about it that I found, like you wind up really connecting with the people on the show. But I did, you do see some of the sides of like, what's going on here? And so can you tell us a little bit, like, if people don't know the show, a little bit about what it's about, like the pods and all that stuff?
Yeah. So the show is, it's a Netflix show, and well, how it's marketed and what it is are two different things, but I'll give you the marketing speak for it, like, because I'm sure, and I'll sprinkle in some other stuff. But the concept of the show is that it's Love is Blind. The concept of the show is that you let me think the best way to say it. I guess it's not really it is the concept of the show is, can you fall in love with someone without actually seeing them, just through conversation? So 15 men and 15 women come together over the course of about 10 days, and you start off speed dating everyone for just 7 minutes. And then as time goes on, if you feel connected to people, you move forward with them and spend more time with them. And you're talking through these walls where you can hear each other, but you can't see each other, in these tiny rooms that are called pods. And if you make it to the point where you feel connected with someone enough that you want to propose to them, you propose to them without ever actually seeing them. And then if you get engaged, you get to see each other the next day for the first time. And that's all captured on camera. And then if you get that far and you get engaged and you see each other, then you get to go on about a 5-day trip. Ours was to Mexico. I believe they go to different places based on what season it is. And then you get kind of a honeymoon, and then you come back for 3 to 4 weeks, and you are basically seeing how you can integrate your lives together, kind of, sort of. It's a little convoluted because it's not real life per se, but and then in my case, after the 4 weeks of being back home, you go to the altar and you ultimately make a decision if you're going to marry each other in that moment. And I did get married, and then I got divorced after that. So it was it's a pretty intense experience. And I think, that's what people don't know that haven't lived through it. Like, you can imagine it. Like, I can tell you and you could be like, oh my God, that's horrible. Or, oh my God, I'd be fine doing that. But until you really live through it, like, it's impossible to comprehend. Even so, today they just announced the new cast for the new season. And to me, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, it's, quite frankly, it's very, like, I feel very off every time there's like a new season of it. It really impacts me in ways that, like, I can't even explain. So like, just the whole experience, it's very stressful. It takes a lot out of your your mental capacity, your physical capacity. And I think it's in concept, like, I stand by this. I think the concept is interesting. I think it can work. I just don't think that it necessarily needs to be as aggressive and exploitative and damaging that it has been. And I didn't get a bad edit. I would say, like, my relationship wasn't shown in a 360 view. I would say there were things that were left out of context. But I've talked to so many people on my podcast, and even in life with my with the UCAN Foundation, and like the stories that happen to people, I can't even imagine. Like, I know what it did to me. I experienced from my perspective what it did to my ex-wife, but like, people's lives are literally ruined because of an edit. And to think about some of the worst things that you've done in your life, or the worst experiences you've had, or the bad decisions you've had, to imagine for a minute that those are all captured on camera and then shown to the whole world, you know. And I think of people who get the villain edit or make a big mistake, and then to be able to, or have to do that in front of the whole world instead of in the privacy of your own life. I mean, it's, you know, I've started describing this as the Gladiator Games or the Hunger Games, because we're all watching our fellow human beings, you know, basically destroy each other and then get destroyed by the public over these like manufactured edits and these manufactured storylines that they're trying to tell with a lot of these shows.
Yeah. And you can, like, I've always seen that part of reality TV, and I think most of us have, and that's the weird part. And that's the part that I oftentimes think, oh, I shouldn't be watching this, because here I'm playing into that. And so like for your series, I know, I remember you guys were in Mexico, and didn't things start to kind of fall apart there? And then when you moved, I just seem to remember, like, it's been a while. When was
it's 2 years, believe it or not. It aired 2 years ago. It's like, I was just talking to my therapist yesterday, and I'm like, I feel like frozen in time since this whole thing happened. It's been years, almost 3 years since filming, 2 years since it aired, and it's still like, it still impacts you. But my ex-wife Danielle had a panic attack in Brazil, and they forced her to film after she told them she wasn't feeling right, suicidal ideation thoughts, just wanted to go home. And they forced us to film, and they didn't tell me about it. And so I went in there to record with her what I thought was going to be me telling her about the party where all the couples got together for the first time. And I had no idea that she had a panic attack until later. So that was when I kind of realized, like, this was really a little weird. But it wasn't until, the funny thing is, it's like I was so living in the moment, and I felt like life was happening to me, and I wasn't an active participant, that when things, you know, I took a little break, I guess, from the public eye. Like, I really just didn't do any interviews. I turned them all down for 5 months, probably 4 or 5 months. I just wanted to go back to my normal life. And in that time, that's when it started to process for me how insane all of this was. How filming for 18 to 20 hours a day, where you're constantly on camera, constantly mic'd, and you're not making money. Like, you make $1,000 a week. And for 18 to 20 hours when we were in the pods, like a day, no sleep, no food. There was I never felt like I had adequate access to food and water or bathrooms. You didn't see daylight. Yeah. You'd have to get permission to go to the bathroom. You were escorted everywhere. When you weren't filming for those few hours a day, or when you would be isolated in between things for days at a time, like, you couldn't leave your room. You didn't get a room key. You didn't have your wallet. You didn't have money. You didn't have your credit card. You didn't have your phone. You didn't have the internet. You're just literally held like a prisoner.
Prisoner.
And then trafficked back and forth to filming back to the hotel, where you're just literally under surveillance and control for 24 hours a day for weeks.
Wow. And do you start to forget, like, I know people have asked this to other reality stars, but do you forget the camera's there after a while? And that you're being recorded? Do you get so used to it?
I think in a sense, yes. Now, what I will say with that is, I was conscious that I was being filmed most of the time, but it does start to slip away the longer you're being filmed. And I think I would remind myself if, like, something in a conversation that would come up, I'm trying to think of like a good example off the top of my head. Like something personal where, like, you might be telling, you know, like if I was telling a story about something with my friends, or I was sharing a past relationship, like, I would consciously be like, don't name that person, because you don't want to, like, drag someone into this that didn't sign up to be in this. So I would but otherwise, like, I was just myself. And so I didn't have, like, concerns about the cameras being there, because, you know, the only thing I want to do is protect innocent people that didn't sign up to be in a reality show by naming them, or, you know, sharing something personal about them or my relationship with them or friendship with them, and then, have the internet turn on them, which, there was a rumor on Reddit right after my divorce was leaked by TMZ that someone saw me and my friend, I'm not going to name her, my friend, my friend who was visiting from England, and it had been planned for months, and she was visiting, and we went to brunch, and someone started this Reddit thread that I must have cheated, and that was why our divorce ended. And not only did I get slammed and lose followers and get nasty DMs, they tracked her down and did the same thing and were like mean to her. And that was kind of like, that's, why you got to be careful on, naming people or tagging people or whatever it is in these situations. So that's kind of where I was conscious of. And I was very conscious of, like, my sisters were the only ones that knew in my family that I was doing this. So I was conscious of, like, not knowing how they would feel or if they'd want to participate. I knew my sisters would, but, like, so, just naming people was really where I was conscious, because I didn't want anyone to get dragged into it that didn't sign up for it.
Were your mom and dad on the show?
My mom was, and my
sisters
to remember,
or somebody was. And how did that impact them then? Like, how did that, because I would assume, as you say, it's a very sensitive thing, and they are there to support you and probably wondering about the whole process to begin with. And then you add on that toxic side, right?
Yeah. It's interesting, because watching these shows back after you've participated on them, I would imagine a lot of people feel like they're being gaslit. And I just remember, like, the way they portrayed the whole exchange with my family was that my family was very cold, not interested, not welcoming. And they asked hard questions, and they're a little more hard-edged, I guess I would say. But this whole thing, like, ended with them all hugging Danielle and loving Danielle and being excited for us. And they just didn't show any of that. They just chopped it up and made it look like they were not believing it, not buying it, and not interested. So, that kind of thing sucks, right? Where it's like, it's not fair. They made my sister look mean. She's the nicest one out of all of us, and it's like,
exactly. And so I do remember that part of it. And I thought, I also think, because you can tell when there's certain edits made, like, I think if you've got some common sense, you can tell that they've, their hair wasn't this way. And I think, well, did that really happen? what was the conversation in between? And that's, like, they can't.
Well, that was just. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, like, we were talking about editing a podcast, even. Like, I could edit to whatever I want it to be, truly. But I mean, where it's like you gain the respect and the confidence of the person that you're interviewing by being authentic and being real about it.
Exactly. And that's what I tell people. And here's the interesting thing. I think the general public, so I break it down, because, I started a not-for-profit or nonprofit, whatever you want to call it, called the You Can Foundation, which is the Unscripted Cast Advocacy Network. Our goal is to provide legal and mental health support for cast members, past, present, and future, and then also advocate for change in the industry. So those are our real pillars of what the organization does. And the reason that I wanted to start this organization was because people are, like I mentioned, their lives get ruined. And I watched, I even watched back, my season when it first came out, and I didn't get a bad edit. There was a lot of context left out of things, but there was this one scene on the beach with all of the cast, right? And I had a full conversation with my castmate where he was explaining to me what his relationship was like when the cameras weren't there, once we were back home and we weren't being filmed 24 hours a day.
Okay.
And it was nuts. And it was like, whoa, I'm like, you want that for the rest of your life? Was kind of my vibe. Like, it's going to be like that before every holiday gathering. It's going to be, and I dramatically, facetiously, however you want to put it, called that person crazy. And I know you can't really do that, but like it was a tongue-in-cheek way to say it. And
we all say it.
Yeah, like I got so much hate for it, and people saying that I was sabotaging her. I'm like, no idea. So I guess what I'm getting at is like, when I started this organization, I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't expect it to be so polarizing. And the people get so mad that I'm trying to help people that need help. And just today, I'm very proud of our organization because we had a cast member from last season named Renee Poche. And she got sued for $4 million after being cut out completely of the show and talking about what that was like and what her experience was like and how she felt like a prisoner and how she didn't feel safe. And they tried to sue her for $4 million. She came to us and we were able to get her connected with an attorney that not only is going to represent her, but also help her countersue for the illegal elements in her contract. And so it's like, she would be sitting there without UCAN, a total like victim of a giant production company suing someone that they paid $8,000 to film for 7 or 8 weeks, and she'd be stuck in arbitration for $4 million.
Jesus.
Wow. People just don't know. And that's why I think, so when I started the organization, I came to the conclusion that there's no math or anything to this, but I felt like out of 100% of people that watch reality TV, 50% know that it's a lot of BS and it's a lot of editing and stuff like that. And they watch it knowing that. They probably don't necessarily know all the behind the scenes stuff and how taxing it is. But there's that other 50%, I think like 30-40% of them will come around. They just don't know. But then there's that 10%. And that 10% of people are just jealous, angry, whatever, pick your emotion, and think they could have handled it better or they would have handled it different. And they say things like, well, you actually said that. It's like, yeah, in a different scene about a different person in a different context. And right. And to your point with the editing, and then it gets dropped up there, like me saying someone was acting crazy and then not giving the context as to why I'm saying that. It's like, and that's mine. But like, there's other stories that of cast members from several shows. And I want to be clear on two things really. One, this is not just a Love is Blind thing. This is a systemic issue in reality TV. It's the same in Canada. I had someone from a Canada show. I forget what it's called. We have the same show here, but it's called Farmer Wants a Wife. No, it's called Farmer Wants a Wife. I forget what it is. I could look it up.
I honestly don't know.
And it's the same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing. And so it is a systemic issue in reality TV. And I do believe that most people came around and realized this isn't okay, the majority, but there is still that 10% that's like, you literally said it, and they don't understand, or they don't want to understand, or they don't think it could happen to them when things get edited out of order. There was another person, I could go these stories like the whole time we're chatting here. One other person came, they literally, from another Love is Blind, they literally edited her out of order to make it look like she was cheating or being unfaithful. And then she broke up with the one guy the day before because she had stronger feelings for the other guy, went and told the other guy. They edited them out of order, so it looks like she went to the guy first and told him while she was still engaged to. And it's like, and she was getting death threats and not allowed to go to the reunion. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's just crazy. So like, you tell me.
So can I ask though, like, what about the guy that this happened with? Like, is there any kind of support that way with the cast members that they kind of back you up? Or is there a contract that you have to sign that you're not allowed to talk for a certain amount of days? You can't tell each other's stories, all that stuff.
Yeah, there's several things in the contract. One is if you leave, so you're actually contractually bound to that show specifically all the way to the altar. So if you get engaged, you can't leave, or they can charge you $50,000 in damages. So
and you were engaged right off the bat, right?
Yeah. Well, we all got engaged on the same day. They just edited it to make it look like I proposed. Yeah. Well, no, they edited it to make it look like I proposed on like the third day. Yeah. But in reality, we all proposed on the same day. editing. It's a beautiful thing, right? So
Wild.
that's the thing is like, you can say, I'm fine, I'm going to be myself, I'm a good person. And then you can be edited out of order to make it look like you're a cheater, or you can be edited out of order to look like you're mean, or this thing called frankenbiting where they'll like show the back of my shoulder talking to you, and they'll take something that I said in another scene to a different person about a different thing, and they'll make it look like I'm saying it to you. And that stuff is all in the contract, that they can misrepresent you, they can defame you, you can't do anything. And then if you go against the edit, it's $1 million each time you do so. It's like, it's wild. I mean, it's just archaic. And I would argue, and we are arguing with the foundation, that a lot of the elements of these contracts are illegal. Right. So saying someone is signing away their First Amendment right for freedom of speech in the United States of America, can you really do that? Can these contracts override the Constitution? Like, really? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we have labor laws in this country, and most civilized countries do. And those labor laws are there to protect people working, and you are working when you are making somebody else money. And that's what you're doing when you're being filmed for a reality show.
And how, like, so what were your hours every day, would you say? I think you sort of mentioned it a little bit, but
yeah, it was like 18 to 20 when you're in the pods in Mexico. When you're back home, it's you're kind of back into your normal life a little bit. Like, you go back to work, but then you're filming most nights and most weekends for the 4 weeks too.
Okay.
That was a little, mostly you're just exhausted, like mentally and physically exhausted by that point. Cause then you're working and you're filming and it's just like, it's a lot. It's really
I can't imagine, honestly. Cause I mean, just meeting a new person, being in a new relationship without all of that stuff it's exciting and it's all that, but it's also, you're like, gee, anyways. Yeah.
Well, then you leave for 3 weeks and you don't have a connection. And when you come back engaged, and no one even know you were on a reality show to begin with. So it's like, so it's
because you couldn't tell anybody, right? You had to keep that quiet.
You're not supposed to tell anyone.
Okay.
Yeah, I told my closest friends and my sisters. I lied to my work, which was hard to do because I can't lie. It's like, I physically like have a hard time getting it out, unless it's, I can tell a white lie to make sure someone isn't hurt by something stupid, but otherwise it's like, I'm like, I'm going at a yoga retreat for 3 weeks, and you're
exactly.
That's what I told my work.
Well, this is a good trait. So, speaking of work, now I know you have part of the reason why you started the foundation and all of it, like, you've had your struggles coming back and being taken seriously after a reality show. And what was your experience?
Yeah, that's another, if you're okay polarizing. To talk about that. Yeah, no, I'm totally fine. I do. So I was a VP in software marketing for several years before the show. It's funny because like I actually got recruited on LinkedIn by the casting director. So I had never seen the show. I knew of it because everyone was talking about it during COVID. So I went through it and I'm thinking to myself, hey, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I'm just myself. I literally tried to talk them out of putting me on this show. And I look back at that, I'm like, man, they never should have put me on this show for so many reasons, especially now because I'm stubborn Taurus and I have like conviction when I think people are being wronged. And, now I'm going to go to my grave trying to change this industry to, make sure people get recognized as human beings and have basic human rights. But, I came back and, I switched jobs a little bit I switched jobs a little bit after we got back from the show. And, what ended up happening was, my company at the time needed to make some changes and, layoffs basically because, well, I can't say because I have a contract with them too, but
it's okay.
So they had to make some layoffs and, my job was eliminated and it wasn't, because of this, but then I heard afterwards that it was a contributing factor because, as a VP in marketing for software, you are often the evangelist for the software company. So I would be working with PR. I would be going on podcasts related to work. I would be talking to analysts. I would be talking to customers. And in so much that this is such an important part of my job that I had to have my show contract amended to say that if I'm doing a interview or a podcast or any kind of media for work or speaking, that I could do that without getting their permission, because you're not allowed to do anything without their permission for I don't even remember how long on that piece. So I had that amended in my contract, because I'm like, I have to do this for work. Once the show came out, like everything was fine. Then when my divorce leaked and things in the media got incredibly misrepresented, it became something where if you Google me or you look at a thing with me or my company or my LinkedIn, and it would all be like a Google search where you'd be like, Nick Thompson, VP at company X, and was he a cheater? Did he say this? Is that, all of that stuff slams this person. And it's like, I almost swore, I never slammed anybody. Like I actually, like, believe me, I wanted to let loose. And this was, thank God I had a lot of therapy before any of this, because I learned how to control my reactivity and respond. So I'm grateful for that. But, then I couldn't find a job, and I was 400, 500 job applications, probably 30, maybe 30 total interviews, probably like 10, 15 different companies. And it would be very similar. Like people would either find out, because I wouldn't, I don't advertise it. It's a part of me. It's not who I am.
Right.
But, I'd go in these interviews and it'd be like, we really like you. We love your experience. We love what you're saying. We love what you could bring, but we don't want to risk our company on if something, more happens with you as a public figure. Or, one was like, it seems like you want to make a career out of this. We can't bring you on board because, if you're going to go on other shows, like that's not something. And it's like, it doesn't matter what you say, because people have these preconceived notions, especially of reality people, as like entitled. Right. And they'll even say,
like, why did you go on the show then? Things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And like, honest to God, I went on the show because I thought it could work. I would have never done like Bachelor or I had coworkers trying to get me to do The Bachelor like 6 years ago and be The Bachelor. And it's like, I just literally thought maybe this could work. I wasn't having success dating. Dating is horrible. I'm sure it's only gotten worse. And it's And it was just like, maybe. And I literally was convinced. I'm like, you know what? I'll probably come home the first day. I am unlikely to connect with, honestly, like the kind of people that go on shows for clout, but this is out of my comfort zone, and I'm open if it does happen to work, and I'm open if it doesn't happen to work, and I'll just be fine either way, and it'll be a cool experience. And the rest is history. Got married, but
you took a leap of faith in doing it, right? And I mean, you live once, and why not? This experience came to you, and why not give it a shot?
Yeah.
Really?
And I was literally telling them, I'm like, during the whole casting process, even after I cast, I'm like, you guys, like, I'm not that dramatic. I'm very like, kind of, it is what it is. I even told them, like, I'm very politically active. Like, my hobbies is politics and activism and, volunteering and all. And I love my community. I love my city. Like, I love people. Like, but I'm telling you, like, I don't think I'm what you're looking for. Like,
right.
I don't,
like you warned
you're
them.
not going to, like you're not going to convince me or manipulate me into doing something or saying something that I wouldn't do or say in real life. Like, I was just like giving him the gamut. And, there we are.
And here you are. Yeah. And that's,
here we are.
And like, honestly, kudos to you. And somebody has to, start something like this, or else it'll just keep going and going. How is it any different than, labor laws in other countries that are just atrocious? Like it's not any different. But
people don't think you're working. Like that 10% I was telling you, they don't think that it's work. You're just getting filmed. Listen, there's not a document. And here's something else people should probably know if they don't know. you're not being followed around by a documentary crew, which, by the way, I've come to learn documentary filmmaking just as bad as reality TV.
Really?
Yeah. I actually got connected with Margie Ratliff from The Staircase, and she executive produced a new documentary called Subject, which is behind the scenes of documentary filmmaking. And all the stuff that she went through with The Staircase with her family, being a teenager, never signed any contracts, any waivers, and then, finds out a couple years ago HBO is making a dramatized version of it. Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones wanted to talk to her because she was going to play her, and she's like,
oh my God,
I don't want my family life that I signed away on a documentary to now be signed away to HBO to make, so documentary filmmaking is its own nightmare of issues.
I often wonder about that too. Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I, especially more recently, like I think at one point documentary, they were authentic, and they started out like for the reason they started out, to give us more knowledge and all that stuff. But yeah, I think that they've evolved in a way that's very similar to reality TV.
Yeah, I think so too. And I remember first thinking that when was it Making a Murderer?
Oh, yes. And then
was that the one with the in Wisconsin? I didn't see. I was already checked out at that point.
No, I did watch. Somehow I got sucked into that one, and yeah, I'm like,
everyone did. No, no hard feelings, no judgment here.
I do look back, and I think how many of us do judge ourselves for getting into that. But it was during COVID, and I think was it like around that time?
It was like right at the beginning of COVID. It was Tiger King and Love Is Blind.
The perfect time, and that's probably exactly. And so everybody was tuned into all of that stuff. So they made a ton of money while a lot of people were suffering.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny too, because it's not, like I said, it's not just Love Is Blind. It's all of them. Mm-hmm. And it's not just those production companies. It's all of them. And it was people from season one had the same, in some cases, worse issues. Like they were sleeping in trailers at not even in a hotel, when they started. So it's pretty wild, but this reality TV is cheap and dirty, and there aren't labor laws and there aren't rules. And like I said, you're not getting followed around by a documentary crew. You're being put in manufactured situations, told what to talk about, told what to do, in a sense, even told, what to wear, told where you're going. And, it is work. Like it's labor. When you're making someone else money by doing something, it's labor. Mm-hmm. And here in the United States, now this is where people roll their eyes, because I'm going to talk a little labor law for you, but
it's okay. But you need to know the fact, the fact that you're giving some of those facts. I think that's good. It shows credibility to what you're talking about, right?
Right. And I hope so. It's not as sexy as talking about, the behind the scenes of reality TV, but the reality of it all is here in the United States, but globally, but I know the laws here better than I know the laws globally, right? But here, they classify you as a contractor. And by classifying you as a contractor, they don't owe you any labor law rights. Okay. So that's like number of hours worked, all of that stuff, pay, all of that stuff. And so Jeremy Hartwell, who's the co-founder of the UCAN Foundation, he actually sued Kinetic, which is the production company that produces Love Is Blind, Married at First Sight, The Ultimatum, several others. And he sued them under labor violations in California, which is funny because in California, just based on the number of hours we were working, we would be considered full-time employees by that state government, because it's all state by state.
Right.
And so he filed a lawsuit against them, claiming you owe us basically back pay and misclassified us so that essentially you could treat us the way you did, not give us any labor rights. So I explored this a little bit further and realized that I actually was issued a W-2 for my time on the show, right? Okay. And a W-2 in the United States for your tax purposes is what they issue full-time employees. You get a
T4 here.
Yeah. And then you get issued a different, I'm blanking on what you're issued if you're a contractor. So what I realized was going
But
on
yeah,
there
it's a slightly
was,
different. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's a different,
Mm-hmm.
it's a different thing. You're an independent contractor versus W-9 versus an employee. So I saw that. I'm like, wait a minute, why did they do that? And then, because we were listed in California, which is where we filmed the pod stuff, but they also paid us for the rest of the stuff as if we were in California. Well, for the amount of time we worked and the things that happened in California, that would make us employees. So my hypothesis was that they gave us W-2s because they didn't want to illegally label us as contractors in the state of California, but they tell us, and in our contracts that we sign, we're listed as contractors. And we're told you can't be in a union, you can't form a union, you can't, all these things you can't do. And they and the little bit of pay that you get. And so when my mind started turning on this, and again, I'm not like, I know a little bit of labor because I grew up blue collar, but I got connected with a director at the Teamsters, which is a huge union representative and global. And she was like, hey, like, we often talk about this at the Teamsters. Like, why hasn't anyone started organizing reality TV? You have SAG-AFTRA, you have, the Writers Guild, you got the Producers Guild, you got the Directors Guild, you've got all the crews, like everyone unionized in entertainment. Yeah. Except, and so from talking to her, I realized, you know what? I'm going to file a charge against Kinetic, which is the production company, with the National Labor Relations Board of the United States. They are a very powerful, very deep power, not very broad power, but they have the ability to pass policy based on labor law. So, for example, they have the ability to conduct an investigation and say reality cast members are employees based on A, B, and C. So I filed a charge, did an affidavit with the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB here in the States, and they are conducting an investigation looking at my affidavit, our contracts, and of course they get to provide their side of the story too, and do an investigation as to whether or not we're employees. If they declare we're employees, of course there's appeals and blah, blah, blah. If they declare we're employees, that like overrides most of the contract by claiming they're illegal. So like the NDAs, null and void by the federal government. Why? Because when you're considered an employee in the United States, you're allowed to talk about your working conditions, which means all those NDAs that you sign saying you're not going to talk about behind the scenes, you're not going to go against the edit, you're not going to, all these things, the pay, all of it will be null and void. And they'll actually have to let people, every single person know that's been on a show, that these are the parts of the contract that are no longer valid, which will open up it'll free people that have been silenced by these contracts and threats of $4 million like Renee, and give them the ability to freely speak about their working conditions and not have any recourse. And they sent me a cease and desist back in September as well, not knowing
I was going to ask you about that
charge. Yeah. Not knowing that they had filed this charge on kind of like a protection, because I was like, when I decided I was going to do this, when I was going to speak up, I mean, it was terrifying. I didn't have a job. I can't imagine. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I didn't have a job. I used my time to start a nonprofit, with Jeremy, and Jeremy did most of the paperwork. Like, but I did, I was the bigger name attached to it. So I did all of the PR, all of the interviews, almost all of the outreach, people coming and talking to us, all of that stuff. And so it's very scary. And I talked a little bit about it today on my Instagram when I was saying, hey, this is Renee's story. I'm going to share it with you, but I want you to know, like, this is why we exist. Because those of you who think that because you go on a reality TV, there's a Brinks truck that drops money off at your house every day. Here's someone that went on the show, got cut out almost completely from it, didn't get any of the benefits, got all of the trauma, and can't talk about her working conditions. And now doesn't get the platform even. And they're suing her for $4 million.
Right.
Like, this is why we exist.
Yeah.
And this is why
the mental health, like, that could kill somebody right there. I mean,
it has.
It has.
There's
okay, so can you
suicides,
talk about that?
There's several death deaths from suicide that have come from this. And, I can tell you, like, it's not my role or job to tell other people's stories, right? So if you want to Google and go look at the
numbers,
several deaths, especially like with Love Island, it's terrifying. And the false promises that they support you. And I know it's gotten better since in the last few months. I know it's gotten better. So kudos for taking the tiniest baby step
so it's making
imaginable.
A difference.
Tiny little difference. Yeah.
It's tiny. Yeah.
But the reality is like, especially during COVID, and this was my experience, we were looking for a couples counselor. All the therapists were way overbooked. I remember mine even telling me, like, I've doubled my client base since COVID started. She's like, it's too much. I need to cut back. Right. I just remember that conversation we had. And so we couldn't find any therapist that was available that had openings. So like we had tried a recommendation from her dad and her from their hometown. It wasn't really working for us, which, if you've ever seen a therapist, it's very rarely the first one you come across is the one that is best that you're best for each other, really.
That's how it is. And you have to jive,
Exactly. That's exactly
it's an energy just like any other energy.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And and then, my therapist recommended someone for us. He wasn't right for us. And it took us months. And I just kept asking him, I'm like, can you help us? Like, you don't even have to pay for it. I know you said you'd pay for 5 sessions or whatever. Don't care. I have my own way to pay for it. I have insurance. I have my own way to pay for it. Just help us find one that can see us, because you've got to have strings that you can pull, and nothing. There was no support. It's like, I know that was my experience. And then I've heard from so many other people, their experience too. And the thing is when you're watching yourself on TV and you've gone through this excruciating process, or you're not watching yourself on TV, in the case of Renee, you get all of the trauma and none of the benefits. And then you can't even get someone that can support you from a mental health perspective.
Right.
And the people, like, I'm tough skinned, right? I remember this whole thing was starting and everyone was scared about their edit and scared about what people were going to think about them. Rightfully so. It's a normal emotion. And I just kept saying to myself, I'm like, I'm not really worried. I don't really care what people think about me. And it was shortly before the show aired. And I listened to, I occasionally listen to like Joe Rogan and then some other podcasters. And it was weird because in like the course of 2 weeks before the show came out, Joe Rogan said on his show, I can't read the comments anymore. He's like, they're just too brutal. So I can't read the comments on my show. And I think about it, I'm like, Joe Rogan, Fear Factor host, UFC fighter, UFC commentator, podcast that gets constantly ridiculed and smeared in the news, and he can't read the comments. I'm like, he's way tougher than I am. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, what have I got myself into?
Wow.
And
I think we froze up.
It wasn't, and it does get to you too. And, thankfully I had a therapist that I had worked with for a while. I still work with, and it was very helpful for me, but not everyone has that. And some people don't know where to go. So that's why we put together the foundation. We have
also, like you said, that 10% of people that might get into their head saying, well, you asked for this and I don't believe that it was that bad. And you must have made how much money? Because honestly, there is that side of it where even I'm like, I wonder how much they get paid for this. I've often wondered that. And,
a lot of them don't get paid at all.
Yeah. And that's, again, a lot of people probably have no idea. No idea.
They think, and then they, and here's the thing too. And again, I don't want to end reality TV too. No. I think people think I'm like bitter or something about that. No, I just want to produce it ethically. You know what would make me super happy? I have a moveon.org/reality. You can only really sign up in the US unless you make up a zip code, but I'm not encouraging anyone to do that. But if you do, power to you. But this is basically a petition saying, can we just at the beginning remind people that this is highly edited and produced for entertainment purposes only, and that these are human beings? Can we just do that? Can we just start there? Like, I'll shut up for a little bit about all the other stuff, because hearing people's stories of how their lives were ruined. People lost their businesses because people on the internet saw them on a reality show and then flooded them with negative reviews.
Yeah, like you
People
even just
lost.
watch how somebody blows up on TikTok and how the trolls come in and the haters start coming in. I can't imagine to the level where you guys are at, right? Like I know
Yeah.
Survivor, but when I first started watching that, I remember seeing some of the stories that came out about the cast, and I felt so bad for them. I thought, we don't know these people. We're pretending to know these people. It's almost like a modern day beheading. You know, like you said, people are
Yep.
funny, like the way they watch other humans kind of feel uncomfortable. And I don't want to say no to reality TV either, because I think there is some of it that's, it can be fun, and it's interesting to see the social aspect of people. I find that's what I find kind of fascinating about it.
Oh, I do too. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason that I never really watched much of it, and I had watched one season of The Bachelor for fun, coworkers, we were doing the brackets and all that stuff. So that, that's fun. But the reason that I didn't really ever get into it was I was in school for business and entertainment business degree in 2008 through 2010, which was when the writer's strike like started the explosion of all these reality TV shows, right? The
Mm-hmm.
dating shows, The Bachelor, all that came when the writers were on strike. And so I
Right. That's
remember
I
I
forgot
remember I
about
was
that.
in
Mm-hmm.
school and everyone started shifting their projects and their discussions to be around these reality TV shows. And I'm like, this is like, those aren't really real. Like it's an extreme situation to be the Bachelor, to be in this compound, for lack of a
Mm-hmm.
better word,
Mm-hmm.
with, all these beautiful women all fighting for you.
Yeah.
And by the way, you're not getting adequate sleep. You're probably not getting enough food and water. You're definitely, at the very least, out of your normal routine. And people underestimate the role the routine plays in their mental health, I think. So
Oh, but
this
yeah,
is like
1,000%.
extreme situations. I'm like,
Yeah.
this isn't real. And that was
Mm-hmm.
like my first thing. I'm like, this isn't real. This is just manufactured. So I never really got into it.
Yeah.
But I think it's okay. And I think it's okay that we have shows like this. I just think we've got to make them ethically. We've got to give people proper rights as human beings, let alone employees, as human beings,
Yeah.
and make these shows ethically. It's not impossible. Humans are dramatic. You're going to get the drama. You're going to get the awkward social interactions.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think my experience on Love is Blind would have been, and again, it took me a long time to get out of it, to look back and be like, that's messed up. It took me a very long, long time.
Right.
And even now, I'm like, I talk about it all the time. And every now and then something pops up and I'm like, yeah. Even now, like today, they announced the cast for the new season. It doesn't air for a month.
Yeah.
But they announced a new cast, and I have obviously talked to some of them already after
Okay.
their working conditions. And one of them messaged me today and was like, do you think it's okay if I say this on my
Mm-hmm.
social media after they announced the cast? And I'm like, it just took me back to like, oh my God, like I remember I went to sleep and then the cast was announced and I woke up and I went from like 348 Instagram followers to over 7,000, and everybody commenting on the way that I looked and the way, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it just took me back, and I'm like, I haven't thought about that day where the cast was announced and like it all started changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And like how they tell you what to post and they give you these things and you just like, you just don't know what to do. You don't know any better. They're like
No.
they're your boss.
Mm-hmm.
And
And this
it's,
was only season 2, so it was pretty blind. Everybody did go in there completely blind. There was only one season to kind of reference, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the show was like, I don't know. I would imagine it wasn't the most watched season, but it's definitely up there because I know it petered off. It's starting to peter off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the more and more that comes out about it, and it's like, I just want to like shake everyone like, are you paying attention yet? Like there's labor lawsuit violations. There's charges against them for treating employees the wrong way. There's literally a false imprisonment that led to sexual assault lawsuit against them. There's the new lawsuit that Renee just filed. Like, paying attention yet? Are you paying attention yet? It's not just me being bitter. In fact, I would much rather, and this is what I said on my story today. Like, I didn't wake up or grow up or ever think about being on a reality TV show.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up there. That was my path. Having never thought of that being my path, I never thought my path would be navigating a uphill battle against Hollywood and giant production companies and giant streaming services that are global
and
and
powerful
to the point where they can get me shadow banned on every freaking social, even on LinkedIn. Okay.
Really?
Like even on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Oh
yeah. I mean, I used to produce content on LinkedIn that was like super helpful to young product marketers, which was my area of experience and expertise. And they would always message me about how helpful it was. And like all this stuff, like my stuff gets like 200 impressions now. It used to get thousands. It's just crazy. And it's not like bullshit. It's like actual helpful stuff. Like, here's how you do this.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my thing, is like, I like to help people and use my experience to like maybe help someone. And that's kind of what I'm doing here with it. But it's wild how powerful they are and how scary it is. And, you know, getting a cease and desist, like I felt sick. And then today it's like the whole, oh my God, I forgot what it was like on the first day that it was announced. And it all comes rushing back today. And I felt weird and dirty all day. And, you know, I knew we had, you know, the story with Renee coming out today, and she was thanking, or not really thanking per se, but saying that the UCAN Foundation helped her. And I'm like, I have to share this. Like, this is why we exist. This is proof that we can help. And I just was like, just taken back to this place where I'm like, I hadn't thought about the day it all started.
Right. Yeah. Going
and
back
now I'm
to
like
it's almost like anything, when even before you meet somebody that you like, you're like, what was it like before? How did I live before all of this started in my life? You know, perspective, it's just everything. And so, well, I know I was reading up on a lot of this stuff, Bethany Frankel, which I'm going to bring up the housewives again, but she's also very pro starting a union and getting, like, she's an activist against this as well. Is it similar?
Yeah.
Like, I know it's not the same kind of reality show, but that there is some momentum coming.
Yeah, she has been, her voice has been a huge amplification for this cause, and I'm very grateful for that from her. You know, I'm not going to share what she and I have talked. I'm not going to obviously share what we've talked about. Nothing bad. It's just, it was a private phone conversation.
It was your thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I was very happy and proud to be on a Nightline special on Hulu where they talked about the reality reckoning with her and the UCAN Foundation. And she is really doing a service to the people that are going to come after her in a, you know, she's a trailblazer. She's a very successful under several things. Like, she's a successful housewife, but she's a successful business person. She's her not-for-profit, and I'm very critical of nonprofits usually, but hers, from everything I can see, is like legitimate. When
from the hurricanes,
and the Maui fire, she had stuff going down there before The Rock and Oprah started their organization to help too.
She
so
was
it was
down
like,
there, and
and so like I think she is a trailblazer. I think she's coming from the right place. I think she is doing a great job of elevating the conversation. More people will know who she is than will know who I am or who Renee is.
And if that's what it takes, you know, and then joining forces in the way that's going to be positive for that, like, because it does start with somebody and then it goes from there, and it just becomes human nature. It becomes like, okay, right?
And I've been in politics organizing since Obama in 2008. I worked on Bernie Sanders' campaign twice. I worked on our mayor of Chicago's campaign, Brandon Johnson, as well. I know what organizing looks like. I know what has to happen. And I know that it isn't about me. And I know Bethany knows that it isn't about one and anyone else joining this fight. It isn't about the individual. It's about the collective group of people.
Yeah.
And for every Bethany Frankel or every Nick or every one in between, right? there's the Renees who have all of the trauma and none of the benefits and get completely erased and eradicated from the entire experience, which, thinking about this, I sent Renee a nice text today, or I think it was nice. I sent her a text today thanking her and telling her I was proud of her. And it was like super long at first. And I'm like, I wouldn't even want to read this. So I'm sure she's not going to want to read it. Yeah. And I cut it down. But what I really wanted to say to her, and maybe I should try and say this again, but to go through such an experience, even if it wasn't traumatizing, even if it wasn't scary, and then to have it completely invalidated by not seeing it play out when you're told how you're going to see it and it's going to play out.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how invalidating it is. It's invalidating for me, and mine did play out. It's invalidating for me when people, not just on the show, but like when people talk about me or say what my experience was when they didn't live it and they don't want to talk to me about it, or they choose not to talk to me about it. So I can't even imagine if all of a sudden they were like, Nick, your and Danielle's story, we cut it.
Yeah.
What?
Like, so you went through all of that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think too, like, wow, we're unpacking some stuff here. I think too, like, how would I have felt? And I was actually okay, because she and I both thought we were going to get sent home and not go to Mexico and finish the show because we were boring. And
not at all. You weren't.
Yeah. Boring. Well, we were.
That's
first.
why they kept you.
I would imagine. Right. But they did send other couples home.
Really?
I just, I can't imagine how invalidating it would be to go through that experience and then not, because the whole promise they give you is fame. And like, I didn't care about the fame. Like, that wasn't why I did it.
Yeah.
But that's the promise that they give you.
Yeah.
We're going to put you through this psychological torture, but you're going to get Instagram followers. You're going to make, I remember the one guy tell me, you're going to see a certain draw to that.
Like, I can honestly, like, that's human nature too. There's a certain draw. Like, everybody wants that, 15 minutes of fame or whatever it is. And why not you? That's what people say. Well, why not you? And I remember watching that series, and I can't remember what couple it was. And I remember they showed somebody a couple times, and then they never showed them again. I didn't see anything about them. And I thought, like, what? Are they not exciting enough? Yeah. And so isn't that funny that you say that? Yeah, I guess it's just, you've got to be full of drama to get to sell reality TV.
I don't know for sure. I kind of know for sure, but they, at least on some shows, I believe that they craft the stories, at least the character types that they want, and then they cast to those and they try to produce you into that story. And I think that those things are happening more often than they're not, especially on these types of shows where they're putting people together and matchmaking and all of that. Yeah. They're not matchmaking you on Married at First Sight, as an example, because they've done a whole lot of research and they brought in experts and they think that you might be compatible with this person. They're matchmaking you to figure out how they can get drama. That's how you have Christians ending up with atheists or agnostics, because that's drama, right? Yeah. That's how you're, and I'm surprised they haven't done a like Republican and Democrat show here in the States, especially now. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. And if they do ever do that show, I would be happy to host it if we produce it ethically, because I love politics.
I was going to say you should start that and do it ethically.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know. Well, and that's the thing. You see, like, things like this, you could be that change, and then you could, I don't know. I always see things like that. There's a reason why everything happens and why certain people are placed in those situations. And because you are somebody that does have that advocacy and that drive to make sure something's done right and ethically, you could have.
Well, thank you for saying that.
I do believe that.
Yeah. That's what I was talking about, like, with my therapist yesterday again. It kind of like she gave me homework last time, so I've done a lot of thinking. And one of them was like, I said this a little bit earlier, but like, I never thought I was going to be on a reality show. It was never an aspiration or a goal, let alone becoming like a voice for change in the industry that I never wanted to be a part of in the first place. It's like,
right.
I'm like, it's hard to square the circle sometimes. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And then it's like, when I ask myself that, it's these stories like Renee shared today, right? Yeah. Where it's like, she's like, I was scared. I was alone. I was sued for $4 million that I don't have. And the UCAN Foundation helped me within a day to get a lawyer.
Right.
And it's like, I listened to it, like she sent it over to us last night, and I listened to it. I'm like, this is why. This is why. Because for every Bethany Frankel, for every, Deep D, who was on our season, who comes out with millions of followers and makes, they were bragging, they made $500,000 last year, whatever it was, and influencing and quitting jobs and stuff like that. There's Renee's who didn't even get the opportunity to do that because they were cut out.
Yeah.
Or there were, and again, I'm not a victim, but there's people that, like myself, who I didn't care about the fame. I didn't want to give up my career. I liked my career. I worked very hard for it. I'm very proud of it. It's something that is a big, pillar of who I am, to have been.
That's your reality. It was your reality.
Yeah.
Like, for real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it is, the price of fame isn't for everybody. And some people, get all the trauma and none of those benefits.
And like it sounds to me like you've had some of the trauma, you've had some of the benefits, but now you can take both of those things together. And like, that's where the compassion comes from, that you can continue with this and help other people out, that, hopefully this will come to an end soon. Like everything, the extreme of everything I find at first, and then somebody's got to trailblaze, like you said, and make some rules.
It's like the yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the who was it? I think it was Gandhi. Actually, I think it was it Gandhi? I think it was Gandhi. I'm gonna look up really quickly if you don't mind. Okay. I'll keep talking while I do it. There's that quote, is what I was gonna say.
Right. I'm so bad. Like, I love reading quotes, and I put quotes up on my thing all the time, but I don't remember.
I know. I think I believe it was Gandhi, and it is Gandhi in like memes, but then I think if you like read further into it, you realize it might not have been him. But it's first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And they ignored us at first, then they laughed, and they released all of these statements about how this, trying to discredit us. More people come forward. Then they're fighting us now because they're literally suing people who are speaking out, sending cease and desist, threatening entire casts. And that means we win next.
Yep.
So
seriously,
that's kind of the, So it's escalated.
They're panicking when they're sending cease and desists. Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And it isn't just me. It isn't just Love is Blind either. It's other shows. And the cool thing that I think is going to come out of all of this is that there's going to be so many people, once we free them of these illegal contracts, that can speak about their experience. And I'm telling you, like, I had someone from a 2008 America's Next Top Model, and it was horrible. Okay. Still troubles from it. Like, it's Tyra horrible. Banks.
Should I say
that? Yeah, you can. I'm not going to say anything I heard.
Yeah. Okay. But it's not like how many people are going to listen to this, but yeah.
I do think there's a little bit, and I'm not, you never know if things go viral. Yeah. It's not, so like the other thing too, is I would say like Nick and Vanessa Lachey, wonderful people, at least from what I could tell, like wonderful people. I don't know if it's cognitive dissonance, ignorance is bliss. They don't know. They're in a different stratosphere. Like Vanessa's on a show. Is Nick back with 98 Degrees? I think I saw something.
Is he really?
What's going on. I don't know. I might have made that up. I might have been wishful thinking. I like. I mean, but they were the nicest, kindest people. I've told this before, but like my sister was the biggest 98 Degrees and Nick Lachey fan when we were growing up. And I told him that, and he like said, give me your phone. And he just opened up my phone and started recording a video for me to send to my sister. Like he didn't have to do that.
No.
You know, at all.
But do
like
you
he
think
could have been like, oh, great. Thank you.
Do you think because they cut them in and out here and there and they do very little as far as I can see on the show itself? But do they?
Yeah,
there
was a lot of COVID stuff from ours. So they were like in and out because of the COVID protocols and stuff. Right. So it'd be like they would pop in, do their pieces, and then pop out.
Right.
But when we did have chances to talk to them, like they were always awesome.
Yeah. So that's why I wonder how much they knew was going on, like beyond what their little, because even people you hear about, people doing voiceovers and stuff or cartoons, they don't even meet the other actor or right. So you don't necessarily know what's happening. Yeah.
That's very true. That's a very good point. I think it's possible. I think again, it's like here, you know, and you know this too, in any self-awareness or, you know, how mental health for a person works is we're all living in a bubble almost with our worldviews that have been shaped by everything that's happened to us before this exact moment that we're in, right?
Yeah.
Our worldviews are organically and naturally, we project them onto the world and we project them onto other people and the people in our life. And sometimes it's a big deal and other times it's not that big of a deal. Sometimes it has no implications or whatever. I mean, I walked by someone walking back when we were messaging earlier, like walking back from my boxing class, and you pass judgment on someone, what they're wearing, they're not wearing. This person it's cold here in Chicago, right? And this person was like not, and I'm like, how are they not, like, why are they stupid enough to not be wearing a jacket? Like kind of thing like that. So like we're all putting our view of the world on everything all the time. And so I sit, you know, I think to myself, I'm like, man, like my whole world for 8 weeks was filming that show. And then I think like it was part of their world, but they had other things going on too. And it's like their view of the world doesn't necessarily have the depth to go into what's happening specifically with Nick Thompson for these 8 weeks. You know what I mean? I don't hold grudges to people in general. I really try not to. It is a waste. It's a void. It is just not it takes your energy. So I don't have very many people that live rent free in my brain. What I will say though is what I would hope, and it's not the Lachey's, like I'm not picking them, but like what I would hope is that people who haven't lived the experience of others, which by the way is all of us, we've never lived the exact experience of anybody else except ourselves, to have some compassion, some empathy, and open your ears and your heart to what they're saying. And don't, even if there is another person who went through the exact same thing on Love is Blind that I did, we're going to have different experiences. So like, I want to hear yours. I would like for you to listen to mine. And that's what my hope is that instead of discrediting, disowning, acting like it didn't happen, like when information is presented to you and someone is saying, I was mistreated, I was hurt, I was assaulted, I was a prisoner, I was whatever that is, listen to them. Just listen to them.
Yeah.
You don't even have to agree. Validate their experience, because you're going to foster better relationships. You're going to foster more inner peace for yourself as well.
Yeah, that was one of the quotes I put up yesterday. That's really, it comes down to most people just want to be heard. They just want to be listened to and know that like their side of things is okay to tell. You know, it's okay to, like, we all live different experiences and it's all relative to what you've gone through. And yeah, so I agree 100%. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think it's important. And it's easy to forget because we're all living in our own little world, right? Yeah. And, you know, I think sometimes too, like I'll throw, and I become very aware of this mostly from like my professional life where, you know, I'd manage people and I started active listening instead of like directing, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of like realized, I'm like, sometimes I have a view of the world on behalf of someone that I have no business having that view of the world on their behalf. You know what? Does that make sense? And it's
totally.
like so weird.
You know
like,
how I noticed
try to
I
think
do
about
that? You know how I noticed on the podcast? Because I say, well, I know people often think this. I'm like, how do I know
who's
what
people
think?
Yeah.
Like, I know
it's
what
like
I think.
Do you remember like, well, they say it's blah, 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 blah. It's like, who's they?
My grandma used to say that all the time. We'd bug her. Like, who are they, Grandma? Yeah.
Well, you know, the people. What people?
The
what
people
that say
are saying this, Carrie. The people in my head, okay? No.
Right.
Yeah, and I really, like, having done a few episodes, I'm like, I have to try very consciously not to say that. In my opinion, this is how I view it. But I mean, let's not get too technical. But yeah.
I've been trying very hard to be like, I think this, or I feel this, or I felt in this situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's also part of mental health. And you start to learn those skills when you get into therapy and learning how to have a disagreement with somebody. It's like, well, you made me feel this way. Well, no, I did feel a certain way. This is how that moment made me feel, not you made me feel this way. Right. There's all those little things that can change a conversation completely.
So true. That's so true.
Yeah. And okay, I ask all my guests this.
These are my favorite.
Yeah. It's a silly question, but that's why I like it. What is the last best thing that you do every night before you go to bed?
Oh, wow. I would say it probably depends on the night, but what I really like doing is cuddling up with my dog before shutting it down. And he's right here actually. Now he's looking at it. He knows we're talking about him. But
What's his name?
His name is Grayson.
Okay.
He's a mini golden doodle. He was, yeah. He was a star if you ask him.
Yeah, of course he was. They always are.
You want to see him real quickly?
I sure do.
Now he's bothered. Here he is.
Grayson. Hello. Oh, what a sweetheart. You've been so good.
I'm surprised he hasn't barked.
I have two miniature schnauzers and they're downstairs and they're just chomping at the bit probably for me to get down there.
For attention. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a wonderful answer. I like that because they bring so much. They love you no matter what. It's a pretty amazing thing.
And usually too, like going to bed, I'll be like, okay, it's night time. And he'll get up and he'll go and he'll lay on the bed. He's allowed on the bed. And then I'll come in there. And as soon as I get settled, he dramatically gets up, jumps off the bed, loudly walks over to his bed next to my bed. Like I inconvenienced him by getting into bed. And then I don't see him again until I get up in the morning. And then he jumps up on the bed and I have to give him belly rubs before we get out of bed every morning. Right on. So it's the bookend to the day.
Yeah. See, there you go. That's a book. I like that. Yeah. No, it's amazing. I love the answers I get because everybody's, some people are like, oh, I watched this and I probably shouldn't do that. And I'm like, no, you do whatever makes you feel good to go to bed because it's your experience. Right. So.
Exactly.
Yeah. To end your day.
I love those questions because I have one that I ask on my podcast too. I ask every single person what they wanted to be when they were a kid and then how that changed to lead them to where they are. And it's like clockwork. People are like 5 years old and they have the biggest dreams and aspirations in the world, like ballerinas, actresses, actors, president, all these crazy things. And then it's like, and that's how I ended up in marketing, or that's how I ended up,
I know.
It's like, you just
I always wanted to be a rock star.
Funneled. Right. Well, save it because I'm going to have you, when I have you on my show, you're going to get that question. So.
Okay. I won't answer. Yeah. Well, thank you. Is there, I guess if you were like, you kind of already did sort of, but if there was really one thing you want to leave people with, about kind of even just the state of the world and the mind right now and how to take care of yourself or just anything, any kind of advice that you really want to get out.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, let me give you two short ones, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I would say for those of you who watch reality TV out there to bookend this part of me, right? Like every single person that you're watching on there you may see them on TV and you may be watching this to escape, your own life or to entertain yourself or whatever that is. And that's totally perfectly acceptable and fine. But remember, they're human beings on there and they're sharing a part of their life with you that they've had no control over, no ability to know or see what's going to be presented. And it may or may not be true, or parts of it might be true and parts of it might not. Don't be mean to them. Try not to judge them, because it is a high pressure cooker environment, and then they're edited and you don't know what happens on most of these shows until they come out. So
Right.
if you watch it and you find yourself judging, I hope you don't find yourself being mean on the internet. But if you find yourself wanting to do that, I encourage you to just stop and ask what's going on inside you that's making you want to comment on somebody else, right? And then just watch these things with your eyes wide open, pun intended, and make sure that you watch them just for entertainment purposes and not as actual reflections of reality. And then the other one that has really been heavy on me lately is you have to take care of yourself. And self-care has become almost like a marketing term, I've realized. And
Agree.
And it's almost like self-care is getting a pedicure, a manicure, whatever. Like, cool, that can be part of it, but like, really look inside of yourself and find what brings you peace. And that could be belly rubs for your dog in the morning before you get your day started. It could be taking the time to get that mani or pedi or whatever. It could be taking a bath with candles and sea salt. That's fine. But like, don't get caught up in the marketing of what self-care is, and make sure that you treat self-care as a way for you to recharge and fill your cup, because that's what self-care is, so that you can show up in the world as your best self. And when you have a full cup, you can spill it over and give it to other people. But if you don't have a full cup, you're just going to end up with an empty cup. So make sure you ignore the jargon and the marketing and find what really brings you peace and really brings you comfort and recharges you.
And take that from a marketer, guys.
And take that from a marketer,
right?
Who talks about self-care all the time.
But self-care, I have to agree with you. It's way over, like we all talk about self-care and it's different for everybody, but it can also leave people, like if there's an economic, not everybody can afford to go on holidays. Not everybody can afford to get mani-pedis. Like there's all different ways, like even just reading a book in your house or sitting in the sun for 10 minutes or putting your feet in the cold snow when you're at home. Like there's all sorts of different ways to make that happen. And self-care means, like you just said, take a break. Just take a break.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'm just rambling on and on and on, but I am an introvert. Most people don't assume that when they meet me, and they don't, a lot of people I don't think know what that means, but
I am too.
I thought there was something wrong with me growing up, because I recharge as an introvert by spending time with myself and thinking and reflecting and coming up with ideas that challenge and stimulate my mind, and writing. Like that's something I've always been doing. And it took me forever to realize that, like, that's how I recharge.
Yeah.
And now walks, and this has been,
they're big.
I'm actually, it's been so cold in Chicago. It's been below zero for 5-6 days now. Today it was 17. I got walking, I got outside, and it was really impacting me to not be able to move, because that's so important to my mental health and my self-care, is to get my steps in, get my movement in, get my workouts in, and just move my body. And I think that even the last few days, this is where it's all been thinking about. I'm like, I felt like my self-care was stripped away from me as I'm like pacing my house back and forth, trying to like hit my 15,000 steps and like get it in somehow. But my, it's, I walk around my living room and kitchen and I've counted, it's 33 steps, unless I take big steps, and it's like 28. And so it's like, imagine that, like 33 steps around my living room while I'm on the phone or while I'm like reading something or listening to something. So it's important to figure out what those things are and like actually get them in. But that's kind of like, I felt like that was taken away from me. And then I see all these self-care things online where it's like, take a bath, do this, and cool. Yeah, that's just not how it goes for me. And I was getting like,
yeah.
There's
got to be
nuts.
like, and self-care could be so many things, like so many things. And it could be watching a reality show. Like if you're an introvert, your way of, ramping down for the day is just to sit back and watch a good show, or I don't know. There's just, there's so many different
whatever
ways.
It is, just do it for you and don't get sucked into the marketing of it all.
Yeah, I agree. That I was talking to somebody about even just I was a psychologist actually, about kind of the new catch, like, how do you put it? Not catchphrases, or like the, narcissism, buzzwords. The buzzwords.
Yeah.
Thank you. Narcissism and ADHD. And I'm not saying, like, I've been told I have some ADHD, and I think I'm not downplaying that those are actual things, and that, but they've been thrown around. People are jumping on this, and now everybody's a gaslighter. Everybody's a narcissist.
Yeah.
And I just find it very dangerous. It's a very dangerous place to kind of go.
It dilutes the message and the reality of it. And you know what else kind of like bothers me about that? And I've been seeing this too. I actually had a discussion with a couples therapist, Dr. Liz, a friend of mine. We talked a little bit about this, and these terms get thrown around now. And it's like, these terms are actually, the DSM-5, I think it's a little archaic. It doesn't, but that's the book that's used in psychology to identify and diagnose people with mental illness.
Okay.
But with social media, and I think it's great because it helps spread awareness about mental health, but it has created these terms and it's completely diluted their meaning. Mm-hmm. And imagine being someone who has been diagnosed or undiagnosed, but let's say diagnosed as a narcissist, or narcissistic personality disorder, right? Whatever, or borderline personality disorder, or bipolar disorder. And you see it just getting thrown around all over the place for everybody's ex is a narcissist, everybody's, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And you're actually struggling with actually having this diagnosis. Same with ADHD, like actually having this diagnosis.
Yeah.
And it's out there just being used as an insult.
Yeah. Yep.
Like,
and is there any other, I know, and you think about any other disease and you might have a slightly different kind of cancer. Mm-hmm. And I hate bringing that up because it sounds so cold, but it's the truth. I'm myself, I'm going through this RTMS therapy. It's why can't I think about it? Transcranial magnetic stimulation. It's
TMS.
RTMS, yeah.
So
and I'm undergoing TMS. That. Oh, you did. What was your experience like?
So it was a September, October of last year. Mm-hmm. I went through the whole treatment. I have to tell you, I believe it worked. I was going through the worst patch of my life while going through this. Mm-hmm. And I just remember feeling like, I feel like a year ago, this would have completely destroyed me. I mean, I would tell she was the sweetest, the person who administered mine. She was like the nicest person in the world. Yeah. And, I would just tell her, she probably knew, like, I don't know. She was in the demo of the show, but, I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, I've got a lot going on, like public divorce, all this stuff, but I'm not going to say that. Mm-hmm. Cause I don't want to bring it up unless someone else brings it up. Yeah. That I was, on the show. And, I just remember like, man, I feel like this would have been so much better if I was in a better space coming into this treatment.
Yeah.
But I do think that it worked.
Okay. And I started sharing my journey with it, like, and it's like I show myself in all its ugliness, and I think, should I even be showing this? There's a part of me that's like, am I being too vulnerable? Because I'm not sure. I'm actually being in kind of a really dippy place right now, and dippy,
but that's when you shouldn't do it. It's the peaks and valleys. Like, I always say to people, with life is peaks and valleys, but like when you're in the valley, set up a campsite, don't buy property, right? So it's
exactly. We're moving on out of here soon.
Yeah, exactly. It's a campsite on our journey. But I would say like it's great that you're sharing your experience, and honestly it's probably better to do when you're not in a valley, because your baseline is here, you can get here. If your baseline's here, maybe you can only get to where you were. So you should, no matter if you're feeling, that's nobody's business but yourself, but I think if you feel like it's something you want to share and share your journey, you 100% should do that.
Yeah. And that's
guilt
kind of
free.
right. And that's where I wanted, because, you hear these therapies and you hear, the buzzwords, and it's like, well, this is what this is. And then there's that worry for me, though, that people think, oh, I actually had somebody say, is it like getting electroshock therapy? And
it literally feels like someone's going like this on your head.
Yeah, they're tapping. It does hurt.
That's
I don't know why.
it
really hurts me, but
does it? Oh, it never
does.
Really hurt. It was alarming the first time.
Yes.
I was like, what is it? But it kind of like numbed.
Now I'm not used to it.
Yeah.
Not so much now, but like the first 2 weeks. And it's always the very first few taps that I just find it like, it's a woodpecker.
And I got headaches for the first week or so too.
I'm still
weird
getting
headaches.
Them.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, you are? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because like the idea of is that it's basically like relighting up the parts of your brain that are dimmed almost from depression or anxiety, I guess, is on the other side. But I know insurance doesn't cover that here.
Depression on this side and anxiety on this side. And they did start anxiety.
Both.
They did this week. So they do 19 minutes on my left and 20 on my right. So
do you do it at the same time?
Yeah, they'd switch over. So they'll do this side first and then move over.
Oh,
here.
okay.
So
I'm
every day.
You're just like.
No. I know. I wondered how they were going to do that.
Because that might be electroshock therapy.
Yes. But the thing is and we can bring up electroshock therapy. I don't know, I haven't experienced that myself, but you can talk about that, and without having any experience with it, oftentimes, like, I think people judge that as well. Well, we don't know why somebody else needed that, or, what they went through. And isn't it, when you think about how far mental health has come, we have to be proud of that, at least. Like, the things that have changed.
I think it was actually an episode of Todd, with Todd and I, with our new, well, it's YouTube exclusive for me, podcast exclusive for him. Mental health headline hot takes. I
heard your first one. I listened.
Oh, you did? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Good. Yeah.
Every Thursday on YouTube. Check that out. For me, and then on him, it's on Bunny Hugs and Mental Health podcast. But I think it's this tomorrow's episode or next week's episode. We recorded them both. I was talking about how, like, we used to give people lobotomies and think that was the best treatment, and look how far we've come.
Well, wasn't that Kennedy's sister or something? Was it John F. Kennedy's sister was given a lobotomy, I believe. I could be wrong, but I think it was because, I don't want to spread rumors.
You don't want to get fact checked here.
No, I do not.
Between that and my misquote of Gandhi, it was like we're in trouble.
You got to watch what you say, I tell you. But I don't know if it's been such a great talk. I've enjoyed the whole thing, and you've been so already helpful about, like, some tips on podcasting, and so let everybody know about where they can find you and your organization and all that stuff.
Thank you. Yeah. So the best place to find me is Instagram, which is, you can search Nick Thompson. I'm like right up there, or nThompson513. I have my podcast, which is called Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. We talk about mental health, cultural issues, free speech. I'm a pretty nuanced person, so if I find someone interesting, I invite them on the show. Some of them are famous people you might know. Some of them are, friends of mine that I think have an interesting story. So, it's really just, it's a great show. We just learn about people, learn about why people think the way they think and act the way they act. We talk about society issues, all sorts of stuff. And then if you find that anywhere you get your podcast or on YouTube, if you do come to YouTube, subscribe. And then on Thursday, you'll get the exclusive show I just mentioned, which is Mental Health Headlines Hot Take with Todd Renenbaum and myself, where we each bring a news story related to mental health. We don't tell each other ahead of time, and then we discuss the key points in real time. So that's great there. And then I have the UCAN Foundation, which is ucanfoundation.org. We are dedicated to, first and foremost, supporting reality cast members with mental health and legal services, and then also advocating for change in the industry to make them more ethical and less damaging to human beings. Lastly, you can find me on podcasts, find the organization at ucan.org. That's it.
Okay.
That's good.
That's
Yes.
Lots of places.
Thank you.
And I'll put all that up on my episode too. So if anybody has, wants to check you out, because I think they definitely should. You're an awesome guy, and it's been a real conversation, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I know I've already said that, but it's true. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you reaching out too. And I didn't realize, I get a lot of DMs, and I didn't realize that you had commented before too with kindness. So I get a lot of mean stuff and a lot of mean people and a lot of trolls. So it's always pleasant to see the nice stuff. So I thank you for that too.
Of course. Well, that was an awesome episode, wasn't it? Thank you so much for tuning in again. And I really hope you enjoyed listening to Nick's story as much as I did. Wow, what a year. We're getting on to, May will be a year that I've been recording. This is episode 38, as we know, and I wouldn't have really ever thought that I'd be speaking to all these different people from different places, from all different walks of life, from all different sides and perspectives. It's pretty cool to say. I mean, I remember watching Nick on the show, and I would have never thought, fast forward to 2 years later, and I'd be talking to him on a podcast that I host. So this is all pretty cool. I feel very blessed, and I thank all of you for taking the time. Give me a follow and a share if you feel compelled to, and let your friends know about it. Let's make a difference in mental health and make it just normal to talk about. And it's okay to share your story. And as Nick kind of explains, it comes from all walks of life. Everybody is affected in some way. You can find me on Instagram at carryonwithcarrie_podcast, or on Facebook at carryonwithcarrie podcast. You can also listen to me on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. I now have a YouTube channel, and this will be my first video show, so give me a break, and I need a new camera and all that good stuff, but we aren't paying attention to me anyway, and I also blink too much, I've noticed, so I got to fix that. But I am not going to pick myself apart, and I'm going to just go with the flow, and I want you to pay attention to Nick, because he's the star of this show. So thank you again, everyone, for listening, and I'm hoping that we can reach just one person at a time.